Do you garden? Do you tend to a small flower bed, a large garden, veggie garden, herb garden, maybe just a terrarium? Have you ever stopped to think about the therapeutic effect of that gardening process, or the therapeutic effect of the landscape that you surveil as you make your way through your neighbourhood or to work or around the block with the grandchildren? Have you had a life-changing experience with gardening? And if you feel you haven't, how might you? Well, these are some of the questions that your next guest has given a lot of thought. Someone who is focusing on 3 kinds of gardening that have something to do with healing. Prison farming at the HM Penal Establishment of St Helena Island, Queensland's war gardens, and Chinese market gardening. To help you understand the connection and how gardening can be healing and therapeutic, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Mimi Tsai. Mimi, it's such a pleasure to have your company. Thank you, and welcome to ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland.
Thank you very much for having me.
You are a sessional lecturer in design and digital communication at QUT, a registered landscape architect, and a fellow with the John Oxley Library at the State Library of Queensland. That's all very incredibly interesting. But I'd like to begin perhaps with your story, because you came to Queensland from Taiwan 15 years ago as an international student. Did you leave behind a garden that you loved?
Well, I have to say I came from Taiwan. And Taiwan, just give you a little bit of idea, the size of Taiwan Island is probably half of Tasmania, with a very similar population like Australia. So you can imagine how crowded that was. And I came from Taipei, the capital city of Taiwan. And really, we don't have much land to garden. So what I need to left behind really is my lovely cat and my friends and, my family and a lot of belongings, because all I could carry really just a big suitcase that fit probably 30 kg to come here as an international student. And really, I think after these 15 years, I'm very lucky I got a small block of land. But I guess like a lot of residents or Queenslander experience, or even people who live in Brisbane City, it's very crowded place. And so that's probably my experience. So reflect on earlier, the gentleman Mark who called in. Yeah, he referred to his garden as a small bonsai. And I totally agree, because my PhD research is about happened at a couple of aged care residents' place, and they really, as you know, the rules, they don't really own the land. They rent the place, and a lot of them used to love gardening, just like you and me, or really appreciate someone else's garden. And so, really, what they have now, just like a small kind of pot of plants, and that really refer to their loved one and making that connection. Yeah.
So it is natural to develop an affinity with things of nature, plants, animals. Therefore, gardens might be what a fur baby is to somebody else. You know, you can really develop a strong sense of love.
Exactly.
For a garden.
Yeah, we call that biophilia, or like a biophilic connection. It's like in our human nature, we love. Like when you feel stressed, if after a week's work or study, or whatever happened in the family or surrounding or the world, during the difficult times, once you go out, you take a breath and, just see you immediately making that connection with the green space. So it is not just clinically proof, but also like in our day-to-day living experience, we know how to make that connection.
Part of your research considers the experience of migrant community in Queensland, and you use a term solastalgia. which refers to the pain or distress caused by the loss of or inability to derive solace connected to the negatively perceived state of one's home environment. So that absence of home. What role does gardening play in assisting people kind of dealing with this grief, Mimi?
Yeah, I'll answer that a bit later, but I'll talk about solastalgia. So drawing from my personal experience. So you mentioned that 3 case studies for my fellowship, the St. Helena prison farming, the Chinese market gardening, as well as the wall gardens. These are all difficult times in Queensland histories. And my fellowship want to learn from these 3 parts of the Queensland history, but also reflect on the recent, the COVID-19, the pandemic experience, because these are the difficult times. And as you might know, I'm a migrant, and for the past 3 years, I didn't get a chance to visit back home, to visit my friends, to make that connections. Although there's technology, we could easily make a phone call to our loved ones or families, but it is still very different. It is only until earlier this year, it's the first time I went back to Taiwan. And really that feeling, it feels like, you lost that 3 years worth of time to making that connection with them. So I think that's what solastalgia is about. And my fellowship really want to acknowledge that a lot of culturally, linguistically diverse group of community, people like me, just ordinary people, they really are, because for the broader closure, self-isolation and lack of connection with the loved ones, and really we experience this type of stress. Some might, really have some like a mental stress, and some people really invested their energy in, making connection to the nature. So therefore, come back to your question, the role of therapeutic environment, therapeutic landscapes, therapeutic gardens. You don't have to be a king gardener or a green thumb I have to admit, I myself is not. I have 2 little ones. I really don't have time, and I try. But really, during that lockdown, and Brisbane experienced a lot. We have several, the longest, I guess, is 8 or 10 weeks lockdown. Took my little ones, went out for a walk, and really appreciate neighbor's garden. And really feel really grateful those people who invested their time and money to make the environment really pretty. And that really, for us, is an engagement. I might not know my neighbors that well, but I really appreciate we refer to them, to their garden, their space. And I don't know if you remember those teddy bears who's outside, the neighborhood. That kind of reminds you, we are actually, although we are, also isolated, but we are connected. We're getting through this together. And I think that's probably the reason why I think this project was so important to myself and also to a broader community.
On ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland, if you've just joined, my name's Kat Feeney and you're with Dr. Mimi Tsai, who's a sessional lecturer in design and digital communication at QUT and a registered landscape architect and John Oxley Library Fellow. Her fellowship project has a long, impressive title. It's titled Vernacular Landscapes and Queensland Memories, Exploring Queensland's Resilience Through Narratives of Therapeutic Environments. Couple of examples there. The therapeutic environment that we might have witnessed through the pandemic of the teddy bears in the windowsills or the neighbours' gardens, and the way that you might derive a bit of relief or therapy from exposure to those environments. And Mimi, you are considering 3 different examples through your fellowship, which are themselves fascinating. The gardens that they had at St. Helena Island during its time as a penal colony, Queensland's war gardens, and Chinese market gardening. Tell me a little bit about the market gardens and their therapeutic value, Mimi.
Okay, so I think Asian migrants are not just referred to Chinese, but I think like Taiwanese or a lot of different like Vietnamese migrants. The first the first reason they came to Australia, I think this Chinese market gardening started from probably 1860s, 1870s. That's probably just at the end of the gold rush. And while there's not much gold for people to dig or explore to make profit, they start to transfer their energy or redivert their energy into like what they're comfortable with, which is market gardening. And this has always been like a local, small-scale type of industry or economy that hasn't been acknowledged hugely in Queensland. There's lots of historical groups. They conduct quite extensive research for that early days of the activities. But what I really want to talk about is, this type of practice still exists in our migrant communities. And I myself, because of that lockdown experience, I remember we kind of cannot travel over like 5K or 10K. And I couldn't often go to like Sunnybank, the place I always could, purchase or buy the vegetables as different. Like kind of remind me of a bit of home flavor. Mm-hmm. And so after that, I start to explore and figure out these little community, these networks. And so there's some migrant people. They have access to, bigger land acreage. They start to plant those type of crops or vegetables or fruits. It's like suitable for Queensland weather and really adds a diversity to our diet. And most importantly, to myself, and I guess to a lot of people, that really reminds you of home.
Of home, yes. And that is where the heart is. So the connection pretty clear to the way that a garden can be therapeutic. Look, if you'd like to help Mimi out with her fellowship, that is actively encouraged. There are a few different ways you can get involved. You could look for Mimi's Facebook group. It's called Garden Stories in a Time of Pandemic. And you can share your experiences with gardening through the COVID-19 pandemic and how that helped you feel better. So Garden Stories in a Time of Pandemic on Facebook. And Dr. Mimi Tsai is also running some digital storytelling workshops. There's one coming up at the Jane Street Community Garden in West End, the Northey Street City Farm in Windsor. This is in Brisbane. If you're in Toowoomba, there's one coming with the Regional Council, and then more at the State Library of Queensland. So I suppose the best place to go is the State Library of Queensland's website and look for the name Dr. Mimi Tsai, T-S-A-I, that's T-S-A-I, and find out more about her fantastic fellowship with the John Oxley Library. Mimi, thank you so very much for joining us this afternoon. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. And I would like to probably just restate what you said there. Because for this website, for the Facebook or for the workshop, at the end of my fellowship, I will donate to the State Library of Queensland. I really think I have great appreciation to the Queensland Memory team and all your stories, because I would like to collect, the ordinary people, their voices and their experience during that snapshot of the time. And then those will be donated to the John Oxley Library.
There you go.
And I think that's really fantastic.
Be a part of history. If the website isn't something you do, if you don't really do Facebook, if you'd just like to get on the telephone now, you can, and we'll give you the necessary information. So you can call us here at ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland, and we'll help connect you with Mimi if you'd like to talk about your gardening experience through the pandemic for her fellowship and be a part of history. The phone number for us here at ABC Brisbane and Queensland is 1300 222 612. That's 1300 222 612.